you very much. It's an honor to be here. I want to thank my brother and friend Dr. Ali Khoury for the invitation, and I'd like to thank the government of Abu Dhabi, our friends and partners, for their continued support and their arranging such an important conference. From the perspective of Egypt and the central bank and my personal perspective, I think we still have a long way to go, and the evidence, the testimony to that is that in this conference, I'm the only one attending from the country and my head of technology, so still there is not much of buy-in from my system. So I think this is one of the challenges we have ahead of us, is to how to develop and make sure that this doctrine is passed through to everybody in the community and the system. I think this one is the most important challenges. I want to ask myself, why do we want to do this and how do we want to do this? It's very important also. We know that there were many presentations about what's the situation with the Arab nations in terms of digitization, but it's very important also to know how we can achieve this kind of major transformation which reaches out to every part of community's life. Why do you want to do this? I recall when I was in 2008, that's maybe 11, 12 years back, I was appointed chairman of one of Egypt's government banks. And the first thing I started to look at was the expansion plan. And the expansion at this point in time, banks were looking at expansion through opening more and more branches. And my concern at this point in time is investing in bricks and stones and mortar is the right thing to do, or is technology at a point in time is going to disintermediate this kind of banking service? And this was my concern. So the first concern and the first reason why I've been looking at this was the threat of disintermediation of technology to banking services. And I think this is an important matter to consider, because if you invest resources in the wrong direction, then we are making big mistakes. And in the past, we have made a lot of big mistakes in investing a very scarce resource in the wrong direction. The second thing is that when we were trying to grow our balance sheet, we found that despite all efforts we're trying to implement, are able to access the market and expand throughout. With all the efforts, the loans were expanding at a very low pace in the bank and in the banking system. I remember during these days, the central bank were pushing for more loan growth, but the loan growth was around 4% a year. And there was no solution to that. This was another reason why the new technologies that have been developed, we find it as an opportunity and as tools to improve the access to finance. The third reason, as a policymaker at the central bank, we discovered that every 10 years we hit a financial crisis or a monetary crisis or a currency crisis. And when you think about, or an inflation crisis, and when you think about it, it is basically because of also the misappropriation of scarce financial resources. Banks used to compete on few big clients, very high loan concentration, and then we ended up in a very high level of non-performing loans. At a point in time in 2002, we reached 45% of all our loan book in non-performing loans. It is today, with digitization and with the new technology, it opens up the opportunity for us in many dimensions. First, to be able to improve the access to finance. This is our aspiration at the Central Bank of Egypt. How we can improve the loan-to-deposit ratio and the number of clients across the banking system from the very humble numbers where we are right now. If we look over the last few years, we today have like 9 million or 10 million mobile account holders who are transacting, part of them transacting through the system. So the challenge and the developments are so fast that we have to recognize that we have to be up to date. What we're trying to do at the central bank now is to take ownership for this, because how are we going to implement this across economies? Who is going to own these initiatives? Is it the government? Which areas in the government? Who's going to coordinate? Who is the enabler? And the central bank has really taken advantage of the credibility and the capital it had created over the last 3 years, being able to overcome a major currency crisis by taking very bold and difficult initiatives, changing monetary policy in a dramatic way, and confronting the community with new realities and a different way of doing things. Despite the shock that happened, but the turnaround was tremendous, and the results were incredible, where the economy and the banking system has been able to generate over $110 billion over the last 2 years in foreign exchange, after it has dried out. So the central bank is using this kind of capital and credibility and the confidence it had created across the market and the community and with the authorities in order to drive these new initiatives in financial technology. We believe that we need a different type of banking now and for the future for our existing generations. We have very talented young generations which are predominant in terms of the population, but this generation does not have access to financing, does not have the minimum capital required to be able to take their ideas into reality. This is what we are trying to do. And the central bank has made a decision to establish an innovation fund for £1 billion to put equity with small entrepreneurs to help them and create an innovation center to help them with the research and help them to going forward. We want to say that the way we were lending to assets and fixed assets and machinery has led us into financial crisis. We believe it's much better economically and for financial stability to finance new ideas and to finance our young generation talent. And that's the direction we are trying to lead the banking system to. We have therefore established and expanded our division in terms of the payment system division and technology division and changed the model of operation. And we believe that the way central banks operate historically, this legacy of being closed institutions with a lot of secrecy inside, we need to open up and we need to be more embracing to the market, to young entrepreneurs, to companies and corporations. And that's what we are trying to do right now. We have established at the country level 2 supreme councils, one of them for digitization with the government and another which is the National Payment Council that has drafted the National Payment Strategy. And in order to make sure that these initiatives come to reality, we had to have everybody who had a say in the authorities involved. We have the Ministry of Justice at the ministerial level, the Ministry of Defense, the Ministry of Interior, the Ministry of Telecommunication, the Prime Minister, and we have the President on top of those 2 councils. So now we make sure that we have the right empowerment, because if these institutions are not empowered enough in order to make those transformations, governments, as a legacy way of operating, governments like control, they don't like to release, they don't like to approve, they don't like to facilitate, but we have to embrace a new way of having the self-confidence to be able to open up to the market. However, of course, there are a lot of matters that we need to take into consideration, like security, cyber risk and security, and making sure that the new systems are protected and not going to create a big market hazard. I think I've taken the 10 minutes, but I think I've given you a flavor of what the passion we have for what's happening in digital technology in our country. We believe Egypt, because of 100 million population, this is considered a tremendous opportunity. It's a tremendous opportunity to take a big leap forward and start converting our economies into innovators and developers rather than just users of commodities and services, because historically using commodities, imported commodities and services has at the end of the day led us to financial problems. Thank you very much.